Hello, friends! A wave of dizziness hit Sarah, who almost collapsed on the spot when she learned about her boyfriend's betrayal. She had trusted him completely, but now he was laughing along with her sister, making fun of her. The girl felt that she could not take another step after hearing their cruel words. Everything she knew turned into a meaningless mess. And suddenly, the water in the lake seemed like the only place where she could hide. Sarah changed into warm clothes and went straight to the pier. The moon was already high in the sky, and the dark silhouette of the old abandoned boat attracted her like a magnet. She stepped into it, curled up into a ball, and closed her eyes. This would be her hideout until morning. But at some point, the silence was shattered by a knock on the side of the boat. Sarah opened her eyes and shook her head, trying to get rid of the unpleasant premonition. It couldn't have been more than half an hour since she'd been here alone, so she called out, "Who's there?" Only the wind answered her, carrying away her frightened voice across the lake. Maybe it was just her imagination, playing tricks on her. Of course, she told herself, snuggling deeper into a ball. Just her imagination. Suddenly, another knock echoed around the boat, followed by a tiny voice saying, "Hi." Startled, Sarah jumped up and began to look around. There was no one on the pier. Was she going crazy? However, the voice continued, "Are you lonely?" Startled, Sarah began to back away, bumping into the wall of the boat. Who was there? Was it really her imagination? Or was someone really in the boat with her? "Don't be afraid," said the voice again. "I won't hurt you." Despite these reassurances, Sarah decided to run home as fast as she could. The feeling that something terrible was happening made her forget her slippers, which were lying right next to the boat. When she finally ran into the house, her heart was pounding in her chest. Catching her breath, she looked around the room, half expecting to see that same tiny boy there. He wasn't, though, which made her wonder if it was all just a figment of her imagination. However, the knocking soon resumed. Sarah grabbed the phone, intending to call her boyfriend and ask him to come over. But before she could dial his number, a new message popped up on the screen. It was from an unknown number. The sender asked Sarah to play a game with them. At first, they tried to scare her, sending pictures of blood-stained meat cleavers and other terrible images. Then they started writing creepy messages, telling her how she would die. The sender also said that they were waiting for her at the lake, promising that it would all end very quickly. Sarah became genuinely scared, thinking it might have been her boyfriend who sent those messages. But then the realization hit her, it wasn't her boyfriend. These creepy messages were actually sent by her own sister. Why would she do that? Sarah didn't know what to do, who to call for help, and most importantly, what to do to protect herself. The phone slipped from her hands, hitting the floor and breaking into pieces. Sarah didn't even try to pick it up. Her mind was racing, desperately trying to piece together how her own sister could do this to her, especially because they had always had such a great relationship. In fact, their friendship was the best thing in Sarah's life. Now, however, everything was turned upside down. Sarah no longer recognized her sister and didn't understand why the latter had set her up. Tears streamed down Sarah's face as memories of happy times spent with her sister flooded her mind. But no matter how hard she tried to make sense of what happened, the only answer she kept getting was a resounding silence. That silence, thick and heavy, pressed down on Sarah like a physical burden, suffocating her and stealing her breath. She wanted to scream, to break free from the chains of confusion that bound her. But all that came out of her mouth was a weak sob. Sarah's whole world, once filled with light and laughter, had suddenly plunged into a deep abyss of betrayal and deceit. How could she have been so wrong about her closest people? Why did they turn against her? Why did they want to destroy her? The pain in her chest grew stronger, threatening to engulf her whole being. Each breath became a torment. Each heartbeat echoed with anguish. Her mind, once sharp and clear, was now clouded with despair. Thoughts swirled in her head, creating a vortex of confusion and agony. Trapped in the labyrinth of her own sorrow, Sarah felt utterly helpless. Like a bird with clipped wings, she yearned to soar, to break free from the shackles of deception. But fear kept her grounded, paralyzing her with its icy grip. Fear of what? Fear of losing herself in the depths of despair. Fear of facing the harsh reality that her loved ones had betrayed her. Or was it something more, something sinister lurking in the shadows, ready to pounce? At that moment, Sarah wished she could erase the memory of that fateful evening, the evening when her world shattered into a million pieces. But time, relentless and unforgiving, marched on. Memories are like stubborn wounds that refuse to heal, constantly reopening and causing fresh pain. The night wore on. Sarah tossed restlessly in her bed, unable to find solace in the darkness. Sleep, elusive and gentle, turned a blind eye to her tormented pleas. With each passing hour, her anxiety intensified, wrapping itself around her heart like a python, squeezing the life out of her happiness. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed in the silence of the night, shattering the fragile peace that had momentarily settled over Sarah's tormented soul. The sound, like a malevolent spirit, stirred her from her troubled slumber. Adrenaline surged through her veins, propelling her into a state of heightened awareness. Her eyes, wide with terror, darted around the room, desperately seeking the source of the commotion. Every creak of the house, every whisper of the wind outside amplified her fear, feeding her imagination's wild frenzy. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic tattoo on her cage of bones. Her breathing quickened, each inhalation a shallow gasp that failed to quench the fire of panic that raged within her. Paralyzed by fear, she found herself trapped in a prison of her own making, unable to move, unable to speak, unable to scream. Then, as if drawn by an invisible force, Sarah's gaze fell upon the window. The moonlight, streaming through the glass, cast long, eerie shadows that danced and twisted on the walls, creating grotesque figures that seemed to mock her terror. It was the face of her own sister staring back at her with a cruel smile, beckoning her toward the window. The distorted features seemed to writhe and contort, transforming into a demonic visage that promised pain and torment. Sarah recoiled in horror, her mind screaming in disbelief. But the image persisted, growing more vivid, more menacing with each passing second. Terror, cold and clammy, gripped her limbs, turning them to stone. Her eyes, wide with primal fear, reflected the haunting scene that unfolded before her. The face in the window seemed to leer at her, savoring her terror, relishing in her agony. It was a game to them, a twisted amusement that brought them perverse pleasure. And then, as abruptly as it began, it vanished, leaving Sarah trembling in the afterglow of her own hell. But the nightmare was far from over, for the face in the window was not a figment of Sarah's imagination. It was real, and it was watching her, waiting for its moment to strike. In the depths of Sarah's tormented soul, a single question echoed. What had she done to deserve this? What had she done to deserve this fate? Why had her world turned against her, leaving her to face this torment alone? The answers, elusive and mocking, danced just beyond her grasp, tantalizing her with their presence while remaining forever out of reach.